Hi, Wool Academy podcast listeners. Thanks for tuning in once again. This is episode 111. And this is also yet another episode of Flock Wool, where I talk to the CEO of Flock Wool, Evan Thomsen. And in this episode, we are talking about the lean methodologies and how we applied them to our little startup in Albania. And specifically, we talk about how we applied the minimum viable product. And I hope you enjoy this episode because I learned personally a lot of applying this to our business. And I think it's very useful for everyone who has a business and is thinking about creating new products or applying a new service. So enjoy, and I'll talk to you at the end. Well, Evan, once again, it's lovely to have you here on the Wool Academy podcast, where we talk about our journey at Flock Wool. Welcome.
Yes, definitely. Happy to be back.
Yeah, thanks for all your time. And you and I actually realized that we have more than one thing in common, but we have one thing in common, and that is that we like to actually talk about business and marketing concepts. And even though we've never met before, and we met for the first time in person in January when I came to visit you in Tirana and Gert in Albania, you picked me up at the Tirana airport, and then we had like was it a 3-hour or 4-hour car ride?
It was a 4-hour drive, yeah.
4-hour drive in the dark. Yeah, we couldn't see anything, no sheet, nothing. But the time flew by so quickly because we actually started talking about a lot of business related stuff, and that was really interesting and inspiring to be talking to you. So that's why we also said on this podcast, we would be also talking about different business concepts that we then applied at Flock Wool. And today we said we're gonna talk about how we applied the concept of a minimum viable product. And the episode is called One Container. So we'll dive into that further along. But maybe to get us started, can you remind us, like, what is a minimum viable product and from where does it originate?
So a minimum viable product comes from what has quickly become a dominant way of thinking that a decade ago was a, heretical way of thinking. But it comes from a book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And effectively, if you attach the word lean to anything, it's probably good at this point is the school of thinking. But the lean startup methodology is an approach to developing a business or developing a product or a new business idea in a state of uncertainty. And that would be a state of uncertainty being you don't have a defined market that's clear and obvious where you can project forward with any reasonable confidence. You can't really forecast confidently when you don't have that type of a history. So, as this applies to Flock Wool, right? So we're looking at Flock. Well, there's not a wool industry running and going. There's not there's not a defined demand for Albanian wool, as an example. So we can't actually forecast forward. We want to, we want to say like, it's going to be great. Everything's going to work out perfectly, but that's not rigorous. That's not serious. It's not responsible from an entrepreneurial perspective. So you apply a management concept to the process of entrepreneurialism, and that's lean methodology. The lean startup concept comes from the actual lean manufacturing process, which was taken from kind of the Toyota production system, which kind of has its roots back in the 1930s but anyway, that's, some deep history. Maybe we can get into that. But one of the core parts of the process of the lean startup and lean methodology, especially when you're developing a new business unit under the conditions of uncertainty, is you create a minimum viable product. A minimum viable product is to say, how can we put a product out into the market that's good enough to at least start getting information? So the old way of thinking, or maybe not just the old way, maybe a better way to say it would be the conventional wisdom about how to start a company was you create a perfect business plan and then you never touch it. And you create a perfect product and make it work. And you put forward a bunch of energy and grit and determination and smart people that have great ideas or something like that. You put all of this work and you create in your mind what is the perfect product. And then you invest $100,000 in marketing and hope it sells. Well, obviously that sometimes works, but most of the time that doesn't work, so you end up putting all this heart and soul and passion into something that you love, and you put all this money into something that you believe will work because you have a business plan and because you forecasted forward and because the target market is a growing industry of $50 million per year, right? All of this market analysis, and it's great stuff. I'm not saying it's not useful, but at the end of the day, that's not what makes a business. What makes a business is, are there customers out there who are willing to give you money for the product that you have and the way that you're creating it and the value that you're defining? So we didn't know how valuable our wool is. We don't know if people want it. We don't know if it's going to be useful to our customer. So let's test it. Minimum viable product. There are many ways we could have gone about it. We could have said, okay, let's create our wool into big fluffy chairs and see if people buy fluffy chairs. We could create some type of, we could manufacture it in Albania into a rug and say, who wants these rugs, and create a small batch of rugs. Or we could follow the method that we decided to go with, raw material. Who wants our raw material? How much money should we invest in our raw material? A bunch of containers, hundreds of thousands of dollars before we know if someone will buy it or not, or one container. So one container, the story of one container, the goal of one container is the minimum viable product. So if you want to export a product, you need to have a container.
So that's the minimum we could.
Yeah. So yeah. That's what we put it as, and it's and it's been good. It's been effective insofar as we have followed that strategy, and the stage we are at right now with respect to that strategy is where we wanted to be. So yeah. And then then there's a bunch of other things we can talk about with respect to lean methodology. That's critical both with respect to the manufacturing and operations process, which is what we do. That's what our company is, right? We deal in manufacturing and in operations and all of that stuff, but also with respect to just the way to think about the process, and that's why I'm a big advocate of lean methodology and lean thinking, is that it's not so much of a process as it is a culture. It's a company culture. It's not like, okay, here are the rules. You follow 1, 2, 3, 4 specifically. It's like, well, this isn't a specific statement, right? Because again, like I said, what constitutes a minimum viable product? Well, there are a bunch of possible things that constitute a minimum viable product. But the theory or the culture of it is to say, create the minimum thing that could be considered a product. A product is the thing that you believe is valuable. Communicate only about the value, and then create a bunch of tests where you're interfacing with your customer. And then just get the information from your customer. Does your customer want it? Do they not want it? How much do they want it for? And then you just run that test, and you're actually getting a positive, or at least informationally positive feedback loop between the value, which is all that a company should be talking about. Companies often talk about, here's what we do, here's what we're good at, here's what our team can do. Okay, well, what value do you provide? Value is in the eyes of the customer. Only the customer, not the company. So what value do we have? We have wool. How valuable is it? We'll let our customer tell us. Is it valuable enough to validate increased investment in the business or not? I don't know. We're not making claims. We're not predicting because we can't forecast forward. It's irresponsible to say, it's going to do well or it's not going to do well. There's positive indicators here, negative indicators there. Let's see what the customer has to say about it. Let's sort out the problem that way. So
yeah, and I have to say, even though I also read the book Lean Management or Lean Startup some years ago, I didn't have it on the top of my mind when we started with Flockpool, and you were really the advocate that kind of kept saying and repeating this and trying to get us all on track. Maybe go a little bit into the challenges that you faced, even like with us, like getting our minds onto this, because I think we all, like the rest of the team, we kept having an idea how a wool business like Flock Wool should be and what we should be doing. And also myself, I have always too many ideas. And so tell us a little bit maybe how you experienced the team and getting us all focused on this one concept.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, well, I mean, again, that's why you have different people with different attributes and different skills within a company. If it's all just a bunch of people that understand the same thing, then, well, congratulations, you can all agree with each other and then miss 90% of the problem, right? But yeah, I come from it from, you know, I'm not an Albanian business expert, and I'm not a wool person, you know. I'm a business person, you know, I think like a business person. And so I brought together a team of people that know about wool, that know about Albania, that know about sheep, that, you know about Albanian sheep. And, you know, and then of course found a partner. Again, we are hypothesizing, following the lean methodology, that our customer is the carpet industry. So that's why we found a partner in the US, in Dalton, Georgia, the carpet capital of the world, who is in the carpet industry, you know, so that's, okay, you know, so that's the team that we put together. But yeah, the wrangling of people with preconceived notions about how a business should be run. Yeah, so that's I do that a lot. I would say that that's kind of been my profession for a while now. And again, like just, you know, just literally taking lines out of the book from the Lean Startup. The idea, it's like, ooh, there's the entrepreneur and then there's management, and these are two different words, fundamentally opposed to one another. The entrepreneur has the bold vision. They have it all perfectly outlined in their head. They're creative. They're maybe even chaotic, you know, like that, you know, part of that creative spark and chaos are kind of related, and they do all of those things. And it's like, yeah, well, no, it's a detailed management process, which isn't to say I have a perfect plan and here's all the rules, but it's to institute a, you know, managerial type of a mindset towards a business development process, and a process of rigor and testing and data gathering and proper analysis, you know, within that development. So obviously, you know, you have worked with tons of wool companies that are successful. Well, how do you apply that knowledge to a wool company that isn't successful, which is what we are, right? We're a soon, or hopefully soon to be successful wool company, but we are as of this stage, not successful wool company. So, you know, all of that information on how do successful wool companies who have cash flow communicate and market and hone a already quality product into a more quality product, you know, that's where a lot of your experience is in. And obviously that's really, really helpful and really important. But applying the answer to our stage of development, well, you know, maybe we have to scale that back in many ways. You know, we have to think maybe a little bit differently. And then with, you know, with Albie and Gertie, obviously, you know, they know they've been a part of businesses. They've run businesses in Albania. They know how to work with the Albanian farmers and wool growers. They understand the business culture there, obviously much better than I do and we do. And at the same time, you know, that they were wanting to put forward, okay, you know, here's the collection operation, here's what we have to pay for and why, here's where our expenses are. And I mean, really, like the lean process, you know, I want to quote this directly just to be absolutely certain. Yeah, the value stream, right? So like the lean process, number one is value, you know, define value through the eyes of the customer, right? Number two is the value stream, where you're identifying the actual value creation stream that you must do. Here are the steps that we must make. Here's the costs that we must incur, et cetera, et cetera. And challenge every one of those steps, every one of them. Question every single step, because any step that's there that isn't needed there, or a step that's done in a way that is unnecessary, is added cost, added complexity, unnecessary movement, across the board.
Time. Yeah.
You know, time, of course. Yeah. So like there were, you know, and typically those steps are people that think they know the answer. And it's not to say that they don't have expertise or knowledge, but it is to say, wait a minute, we're faced with uncertainty. We're a new business. We can't look back at and point to the 5 Albanian wool companies that are operating right now, making money, and then copy it and modify it a bit. We can't do that. So we have to respect the uncertainty. We have to respect that we can't forecast perfectly. When you can't forecast perfectly, you should be very, very cautious in saying, okay, we're going to follow steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then boom, we have a company. So yeah, and again, like I said, it's not a set of rules per se, right? It's a cultural idea. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. And so that's why in a lot of our calls and a lot of our meetings over, several months, I would have to continually bring up these points because, again, it's not, you can't just pull the playbook out and be like, okay, well, here's the rules of how to start a wool company in Albania. There's no book that exists on that topic, right? No. So yeah, it's a culture, it's a way of thinking. And when it comes to cultural values and philosophies and mindsets, it's about conversation and iteration and, continually like instilling those values. And maybe hopefully I've been somewhat successful in bringing these forward, like time will tell, I suppose. But, I think that's even, some of the debates we've had as a company, right? If we're kind of like lifting the hood on some of the internal arguments that have occasionally occurred. It's, I've never wanted to be forceful in any of this. It's like, okay, we're going to take our time. I can't expect this to just come to fruition overnight. These are a lot of things to think about. It's a different way of going, especially when we have the strong tendency to think, I know the answer. I have knowledge. I have experience, and again, those things are good, but at the same time, those knowledge and experiences can sometimes be the death of us, right?
Exactly.
We know something that just isn't so, and it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to unlearn something or make secondary our knowledge to a primary cultural process of learning in the new and uncertain environment. So.
Yeah, and I have 2 examples that come to mind that we can maybe share. One that kind of I also started and brought in was that we have to actually, when we have collected the wool, we have to sort it, and we have to have a detailed sorting plan, and we have to, sort the bellies and the backs and everything. And because what I learned so far in the wool industry is that also that's how you add value. But implementing a good sorting plan meant that we would have to have an expert inspect the wool first, come up with the sorting plan. Then we would need to train people to actually implement the sorting plan, etc. So it was going to cost us a lot of money, cost us a lot of time. And even though probably in the future that's something we probably should be doing, but for a minimum viable product, it wasn't necessary. So that was one discussion I think that we kept coming back to, and but then decided no.
It's a perfect example. That's a perfect example, because obviously everything you're saying is right in general. Is a detailed sorting plan instituted by someone with expertise and then training an entire staff on that sorting plan, does that add value to the product? Yes. Okay. What about our product right now for our customer right now? Like, do we know that? Probably not. We don't have enough information, and that would generally violate the minimum viable product. So we're going to be selling this product. Obviously, it's not going to be the most high quality wool in the world. Is it going to be wool that meets a quality standard for some purposes to generate positive cash flow? Well, we'll find out. And then our customer might come back to us and say, hey, this was good. We were able to have this use, but if X, Y, and Z were done for us, it would add more value. It would be better for us. We'd be willing to pay more for that because it was help our manufacturing process, or help us create this product at a higher quality for a better price, or with less time, or with less waste in the following ways. And so again, we have to, it's not that is something that we wait for the answer from our specific set of customers and the knowledge that we gather in that way, rather than the general industry, and technical knowledge that we have about how, this company operates in that way. There's, there's a lot of players. There's a lot of uses for wool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the second example that comes to my mind is that we were discussing a lot of times about how we would be collecting the wool, because when we did our trip, we realized that some shepherds are so remote, and we had like car trips where we were like going through the car and getting almost seasick. So it was very, very hard to get to some of these shepherds. So that also kind of made us realize, okay, if we want to collect their wool, it will be really, really time consuming and difficult and take a lot of fuel and time, etc. So maybe, yeah, take us through that discussion that we had several times.
Yeah, that was a discussion we had several times. Yeah, where it was there was a belief about how they needed to operate, and well, I mean, again, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but we've started operating in the past week, and it's been going very, very well. And the way in which that collection operation panned out was not according to their predictions. That there was some enthusiasm about the process from the growers, and they gathered together, and that really did simplify. But yeah, before it was, we have to go 1 to 1 to 1, and they're in these very difficult to reach and time consuming and expensive to transport environments. And so it was like, wait a minute, like it's gotta, like, we don't, yeah, okay, most everyone is not going to communicate with us, not going to work with us, not going to meet our ideal terms. Are 2% of the wool growers in southern Albania willing to communicate with us and meet with us on our terms that work for our cost structure and what we're willing and able to like maintain for now? Like probably, like, so, we can front load a little bit of work to communicate effectively, and to say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we're collecting, can that be done? Does that work for you or not? And try to avoid a lot of the challenges, in particular costs, but also complexities, simply by, trying to communicate more effectively at the beginning. And again, not specifically from the way of like, well, our other customer or partner is the wool grower, so like we shouldn't simply assume here's how they want it to be collected for them, because that really isn't happening. It's spotty. There's some wool collection happening in Albania, but not much, right? So there isn't really a norm established, and moreover, we can't afford to meet the a company can't just say, we'll do whatever you want, like we can't just do that. We can't just say like, oh, well, whatever you want. You have 50 sheep and we have to travel an hour to go get that wool. Fine, we'll do it. No, we can't do that. Like, we have to have a criteria of like, okay, here's the acceptable range by which we're willing to collect. What wool growers are interested, able, willing, or enthusiastic about meeting us, on those terms. And we ended up, finding that. So
yeah, and I think for me the concept really made sense, that instead of going to all these different villages or where the shepherds were, you kind of pointed out there's this one big road that goes from one city to the other, and we did see shepherds grazing there. So that should be a minimum viable, where we collect. I mean, we don't know exactly in the end if it was exactly that one road, but that's kind of what we were aiming for.
Well, but again, what ended up happening, like, okay, what did the shepherds do? Oh, the shepherds end up like gathering together in a small little band and having a big group shear. And it's like, that's exactly what we wanted. That's the ideal thing. Do all shepherds do that? No. Do some do it? Yes. Who should we collect from? The some that do. How do we find them? Communicate, and that's exactly what happened. So it wasn't a plan. It was a modular, mobile, flexible structure, that had criteria and conditions and considerations. And even so, the thing that I'm most excited about, that Albie said in the call, was the thing that I kind of have projected would be the future of this. I think it was when you were in Albania, actually, where I said, I think the vision is to create a community around this wool event, you know, because we want to establish this as a more of a cultural thing within Albania, because it can be such an important point. And that's where we'll probably be heading next year, with a bigger collection operation, again, assuming everything keeps going as it has been so far. But with a larger collection operation, it'll be like, hey, we're going to have an event in this town that's all about shearing and wool collection, and you know, it's kind of a party, it's kind of a celebration, right? And that it looks like that's kind of already the light culture that's happening, and so we can simply just insert our operation into that, improve upon it, make it a little bit bigger, and yeah, and at the same time, hey, now everybody's getting this reward that most weren't expecting. So
yeah, that actually already kind of dived into one of my last questions about this topic. So let's assume we're like a few months further down, we got our one container to where we wanted to go. How will we then start to evaluate, and what will be the next minimum viable product? How will we do the analysis? How will that process go? Can you kind of
finances.
Finances.
Pure finance. Yeah, it's, I mean, 99% finance. So it's, okay, now, all right, we've been spending money. How much did we spend? How much did the processing cost? How can we define those costs? Like, not just understand what the values were, but what were the contributing factors to those costs, which is to say, like, okay, if we were, now that we're wiser and smarter because we've done this once, you know, what would we do differently cost structure wise? What could we obviously improve? And then what did we sell it for? And it's like, if that's something that looks positive and people are happy with, then we start talking about, okay, you know, what's the expansion? How happy is our customer? You know, like, I would say it would be two things. Yeah, did we make money at all? You know, like, and then, okay, who bought it? What have they done with it? Are they happy with it? Do they want more? Have they talked to somebody else who also wants it? You know, like, so what has happened with demand generation? So yeah, I mean, those are really going to be the two metrics. It's pretty simple, really, you know.
Yeah. And actually, that's also what I really liked. Once we've established, it was kind of like our mantra: one container. And I actually found that very, very liberating, because it helped so much in every little decision that we had to take. So whenever there was a question popping up, you know, I was like, no, one container. So that means the answer is this and that. So I found it really helpful once I was, you know, fully on board, because it made everything easier to decide.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing too, about like the lean process for, you know, in the startup environment, when you have this uncertainty, is that a lot of people do, and again, this is positive in most ways, but like, you know, I'm a part of a new business, it's a new thing, like, that's really exciting. And so a lot of people put these like emotions forward, and that does a lot of positive things, but sometimes it also means, oh, I want to do everything. We can take on everything. We can, you know, again, like, you know, we can collect from every wool grower, no matter what, no matter where they are, no matter how long it, and no matter how many bones in our back we break driving on the roads to go get it. But, you know, like, so, and that is not an effective approach, you know. And so it's just like, okay, no, like, let's, you know, reel things in. We're just focusing on this one simple target that we know we can hit, you know. And I mean, it's also like this corresponds to a lot of other just basic wisdom, you know. You can't, before you run, you have to walk. You know, so like, a lot of people get into the environment, they want to sprint, they want to go crazy, and it's just like, okay, you know, before you have this amazing company that is working really well, you have like a just slightly okay company that did one thing kind of okay, you know. That they started there, you know. That is where they start. Like, you know, before you have 1,000 customers, you have one customer. Okay, how do you get that one customer? And, you know, and then how do you go about a process and getting that one customer that doesn't make you want to rip all your hair out? Well, I guess for me, I'd be fine, but that doesn't stress you out and force you to invest your entire life savings into something that you don't actually know, like, is going to work. So it's like, I mean, I don't have confidence in my ability to predict. I have confidence in my ability to manage and think appropriately. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, we even applied it, now that I think about it, to our social media efforts. Because when we started out, we also had all these, we can, be active on Twitter and we can be active on Facebook. But right now we're mainly focusing on our Instagram account. And that's also like really focusing and, building up some communications, but not trying to do everything and be everywhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's perfect.
Plus this podcast.
Oh yeah, well, but now we've added this, you know what I mean? Just like I think it's a myth that you can say, here's the perfect plan, here you go, there, plan. And then follow the complete marketing strategy, full, digital content creation with perfect production, a perfect supply chain, 5 customers that just pop up. Boosh, there you go. Like they're now buying everything. Like, okay, that doesn't happen. So
yeah, well, thank you so much for walking through this, all of us learning and applying this concept of lean management and the minimum viable product. I thought it was really interesting and engaging today. And then we already said we have more to talk about, so we'll do that in the next episode, and I'll see you then.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
So I do hope you enjoyed our discussion about the lean methodologies and the concept of the minimum viable product. If you want to find out more, then head on over to the show notes at elisabethvandelden.com/111 or 111, or visit the Flockwool website at flockwool.com. Until the next episode, I wish you all the best. Thanks for listening, and bye for now. That was fun.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love talking about this.